Let me digress a bit. I got a call from our esteemed rabbi in late October. Actually, I got several calls of progressively greater degree of franticness. And as a mental health professional of sorts, I cringed. I naturally assumed it had something to do with some of the people that had to do with conceiving the Latke-Hamantash debate and some services that they might need, but I was wrong about that. When the rabbi reached me, I realized that he was actually just closing a deal. 2 years ago, Provost Sauer asked, what would it take to lure a scholar of my stature from my perch in Ann Arbor to come to Hyde Park? I swung for the fences. I want, I said with a slight tremble in my voice, a role at the Latke-Hamantash debate. Richard gulped. Harold, I just don't know I can promise that. The Benefits Committee certainly wouldn't let me put that in writing. Isn't there something else you want? Maybe a reduced teaching load, a signing bonus, an endowed chair, a window in your office, a nanny for the children, free parking, a secretary, courtside seats at, well, don't forget that last one. I don't want any of that, I said, in hindsight maybe a bit too hastily. I want latke-hamentaschen. Pushed to the wall, the provost said, I'll call Rosenberg, we'll see what we can do. He's finally delivered. Beware when your prayers are answered. Having gotten this gig through hard-boiled politics rather than any conceivable consideration of merit, I suddenly realized two things. First, if you show up to play poker, or in this case to debate Latke and Hamantaschen, and you don't know who the sucker is, you do. I watched some old videos of previous Hillel debates. They featured prestigious scholars and deans who apparently take sabbaticals solely for the purpose of preparing for this event. They nonetheless humiliate themselves with highbrow humor that featured Aramaic discussion of various digestive matters. I can't believe that I'm doing this. Second, I know nothing, absolutely nothing about the topic of tonight's debate. I didn't really know for sure I was Jewish until they found my name in a file on Mel Gibson's computer. I grew up in one of those homes where atheism is the ultimate expression of Jewish identity. So this is serious. From this perspective, my parents taught me that things like bar mitzvahs and going to synagogue are really quite goyish. So my father is actually crushed that I'm participating in this debate. I spent all these years raising you, helping you with homework, spending money on fancy schmancy schools, and this is how you repay me, by talking at Hillel. The shame of it. I understand you're having a midlife crisis, but why can't you become a Buddhist like that nice Cohen boy? And they're kind of atheists, aren't they? So, in other words, I faced tonight the ultimate nightmare of the ethical culture baby. I dealt with the crisis by running to the key reference sources in my upbringing about Jewish history, theology, and culture, The Jewish Connection, Great Jewish Sports Legends, Making It by Norman Podhoretz, Shonda, My Career in the Courtroom by Alan Dershowitz, Tie a Red Wristband Around the Old Oak Tree, Kabbalah Selections, edited by Madonna. And I realized I knew 3 Yiddish words unrelated to reproduction or the digestive tract, and you'll certainly know what they are by the time I'm done.
Desperate, I called my former dissertation advisor in the hope of imbibing some of that Harvard warmth. My old advisor, who I'll call Kenneth, is a political philosopher with a religious education. Maybe he could help. He picked up the phone. They chose you? You who know nothing from Latke and Hamantash? That's my sugar. No, I live in Chicago now. Harold, he noted, where did you get my number anyway? Well, I hung up filled with that edible desire for revenge that normal people harbor on their parents, but that graduating students deserve for our dissertation chairs.
I felt better after making a mental note to have Kenneth invited to the Monday Economics Department seminar. I wandered the midway trying and failing to construct a critical stance on Latke and Hamantaschen. The election rescued me. I realized watching the well-dressed neoconservative Paul Wolfowitz celebrating the Bush victory. On the other side of the split screen sat a scruffy boychek, Wallace Shawn, who was rending his garments as he contemplated the carried loss. There on TV I saw it. Wolfowitz was chowing on a gooey Hamantaschen. Shawn, in contrast, was having a beautiful, crunchy latke. And it hit me. Hamantaschen is the food of choice for those snooty, sophisticated, and assimilated Jews, sometimes but not always bearing family ties to Western Europe. Meanwhile, the latke is the natural fuel for the peasant-like proletariat whose parents and grandparents hail from parts east. The typical H Jew, that's H for Hamantaschen, is embarrassed by the simple latke, so suggestive of superstition and poverty, so primitive in its sensual, greasy, and salty tastiness, so appealing to ghetto Jews. To the typical H Jew, Hamantaschen, rather, captures the sophistication and opulence of the Wagnerian opera. L Jews, that's L for latke, know the thinly veiled condescension felt by the H'ers. They find Hamantaschen grossly excessive, Christian influenced, and obscene. Can you imagine Tevye snarfing a Hamantaschen? His donkey could hardly carry one. The schism between H's and L's is the true latent, uncomfortable cleavage in American Jewish life. Papered over, never mentioned to pollsters or in settings that might reach prying Gentile ears, the HL division threatened to explode in the wake of the 2004 election. Reeling from devastating loss, nervous Democrats suggested that we give up our latkes and shift to the less culturally discordant Hamantaschen to complete our belated Americanization. With any luck, this switch might forestall the pogrom rumored to be afoot within the red states. Now, once we acknowledge this cleavage, it's remarkably easy to locate famous Jews on either side of the HL debate. I myself, for example, am the kind of privileged, haughty, unselfconsciously self-assured, and goyishly handsome H Jew that I haven't gotten to the joke yet. That a latke would despise. Since I teach social work, however, my dean has instructed me, cast your lot with the underdogs. So I must switch my allegiance and fight for the latkes. As for the other celebrities, judge for yourself. We do a lot of PowerPoint. You might forget who I am. Most of the sports legends, they're latkes. We have one Hamantaschen, but he was adopted. What do you think? This is Baruch Rambano. He can have whatever he wants. He's a pure latke, but he agrees with the arguments on the other side, and he did have an affair with an H. Definite Hamantaschen. Whatever's healthiest. That's Ruth Bader Ginsburg for some of you undergraduates. A definite L. I have no idea. That's Alan Greenspan for those of you. Here's two H's. That's Paul Wolfowitz and Mr. Chalabi. Two latkes. Hamantaschen. Latke. Hamantaschen. Latke. Latke and friend. No category. He's been excommunicated. We'll say Hamantaschen. Goldie Hawn used to be a latke, but now she's a Hamantaschen. Wonder Woman is married to a Hamantaschen. Kim Basinger, her agent is a Hamantaschen. Siggy was a Hamantaschen. Joyce Brothers, latke. Two latkes. Our provost is a latke, but he looks a little bit like the former Republican National Committee Chairman, who's a Hamantaschen. Here we have an Alsado boy chick with family ties. He's a latke. Here we have an American boy chick with family ties. He's a Hamantaschen.